Hello everyone, Brian from Witch Doctor here. Today we are going to do some what's called neck turning. So that piece of the brass up here that holds the bullet in place is called the neck. And there's sometimes a need to trim that down and make it thinner. Sometimes you have really thick brass, it doesn't fit in the chamber. Sometimes it does fit, but you don't have enough clearance in the chamber from the neck, and other types of reasons why. But so periodically, shooters will have to turn that down to decrease the diameter. Today we'll go over step by step what is needed in order to do that, and hopefully produce a nice educational video for you. Alright, first step in the process is selecting the right tools. The first tool that we're going to look at here is what's called a mandrel. A mandrel is a piece of equipment that you push the brass piece into, and it increases the neck diameter to the neck diameter that you'll need. In this piece of brass, the brass that we'll be working with in this demonstration is 220 Russian Lapua brass, and we are going to be increasing the neck diameter to be able to fit 6mm bullets. And so what we have here is a 6mm mandrel, and what we're going to do is take the mandrel, screw it into the die. Okay, and what you see here is the mandrel portion sticking out of the bottom. This right here is a stopper. So when the brass is going up into the mandrel, this piece right here will stop the brass from basically crushing itself on the top of the mandrel body here. And it'll basically press on the bottom piece of the brass to stop it so you don't crush it. So it's important to set that perfectly so that you're not crushing your necks. I have this already set perfectly. Basically the way that I do it is I set it down quite a bit, bring up the piece of brass, and it usually doesn't go through the entire part of the mandrel, and then I slowly turn a couple turns, bring it up again, and I see how far it gets up in there. Sometimes you'll have to get a light, like I have this nifty little light here, and I shine the light under there to get a good look to see where the piece of brass is stopping. Make sure that it just doesn't hit the top, the brass neck doesn't hit the top piece of that mandrel body, and you should be good. Anyway, so now that that's set and I have the right shell holder in place, it has to be the right shell holder, you don't want it loose. Then we go on to lubing the inside of the case neck, and what we're going to use today is Delta Turning Lube from Italy. It's a no oil solution, and what you do is you just take the piece of brass, dip it in there, pour a little in a small dish. As you can see the oil, or I'm sorry, it's not oil, the no oil lube inside. Throw that puppy in, and then press the mandrel up and down, and there you go, voila. We now have a 6mm diameter bullet, and I'll be using a turning tool that's developed for 6mm. Now just a comment here on why I'm using this Delta Turning Lube no oil is because it is a liquid form, it's not oil. It is not messy at all. I can rub my fingers on it. There's no smell whatsoever. It clearly lubricated the case to get it sized correctly. And the reason why I appreciate those properties so much is because typically I will use some kind of wax or some kind of lubricating oil to do all of this. The mandrel sizing and the neck turning, which I'll describe later. And this stuff is dirty. I mean, it gets caked inside the neck. It gets caked outside the neck. And what I have to do is, if I use a media like a oil based media, or some kind of wax based media, even a lanolin based media, I have to then dry tumble these clean for, a good 4 to 5 hours to get that material out from the inside, and sometimes from the outside even. Or I can wipe out the outside, but there's still a little film on there. So anyway, I highly suggest that you try this Delta Turning Lube. It's a no oil lubrication system, and really simple. Just dip it, throw it in there, run it through the mandrel, and you're done. Okay, and it'll dry off. There's no, I don't have to tumble this brass anymore. In fact, to some degree, there'll probably be a little bit of lubricity inside the neck, which I've found is an advantage when you're shooting. So anyway, so the alternative is, take a piece of brass, dip it in something like this, run it, and then have, wax and gunk inside the neck, and then have to throw it in the tumbler for several hours to get it out. So I do encourage you taking a look at this Delta Turning Lube No Oil from Italy. Sandro Caroselli is the person who sells it. I believe you can find it at PMA. I'll put a comment about that in the comment section of this video. Okay, on to the next step. Okay, now that we have the brass, which by the way was weight sorted, and I took all the average size of the 100 pieces of brass here to use for this video, and also for the upcoming testing that I'm going to be doing. But so now that we have them mandreled up to 6 millimeter, and by the way, the mandrel on the press fits the mandrel on our neck turning device, which I'll go over in a little bit. But what you could do before you start trimming the necks is actually checking the thickness of the neck itself. I already know the thickness of these necks, but I'll just demonstrate that. Take one of these ball micrometers and turn that puppy. I don't have a digital, but I do have this one here. So this is telling me that the thickness is 14 thousandths, just about on the dot. Yeah, a little over 14 thousandths thick is what this is telling me. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is, I know what I have to do is bring this down to 11 thousandths, and 11 thousandths is going to be my magic number. Again, you have to check yourself to see what the thickness of your brass is, the diameter of a loaded bullet, what your chamber neck is, all those other things to make those calculations. I'm not going to do that for the purpose of this video. Just for this video is just about the process of turning necks. Okay. I'm going to leave this ball micrometer out though, because I'm going to need it to make sure that my cuts on the neck are actually the right thickness. Okay. Okay, so next step, now that I know I have the brass mandreled, I have my tools, is to take this chuck here made by K&M. Different people have different ways of doing this. I use a chuck and a drill. I don't recommend an impact wrench. I recommend a drill. Okay, and what this drill does is it holds the, or I'm sorry, what the drill and the chuck holder here does is it'll hold this brass into place. And then the drill, the reason why I like the drill is it gives pretty consistent turning. Sometimes impacts, initially turn really fast and hard, or really slow and then fast and hard. I like just a simple, consistent movement with my drill. And what I'm going to do here is we can use the Delta Turning Lube No Oil on the outside of the neck. So I'll throw some in my little cup. Same thing, you just simply dip it, and you can see on the outside there's plenty of it. Okay, you put it inside the drill with the device on it, hold it into place, And then as you hold this and turn, you see right there how it hooked the piece of brass in. How it did that is it has a little mechanism down here. See how that goes up, and that's what holds the piece of brass into place. Okay, so I'll bring it back down, put the brass piece in, hold it into place, turn it back up, and now it's on holding that piece of brass pretty good and pretty steady. Okay, next thing to do is to get a good neck turner. This is a really high quality neck turner, probably considered one of the best. It's modeled after a neck turner that has been used for decades in all sort of competitive shooting sports. This one is called the Blueberry. You can find this at Bruno Shooter Supply, and it does a good job turning necks. I've received 100 pieces of brass recently that were turned by something like this, and they were just perfect. It has this nice convenient numbering system on its mandrels, so you can see clearly I have the 6mm mandrel in there. And it has an easy way to adjust the how much cutting you're going to be doing. And I'll go over that here in a second. Okay, now that we have the brass sized appropriately for the mandrel, we take our neck turning tools. This is the Blueberry neck turner that I mentioned before. We'll take the this is a K&N brass holder. Stick the brass piece in there, turn this down, lock it down pretty good. Gotta get it nice and tight. What we're gonna do is we're gonna be using this ball micrometer to measure neck thickness after we turn a piece of brass. So take the piece of brass, dip it in that Delta Turning Lube No Oil from Italy. And remember, this stuff doesn't have any grease or any major stuff that sticks to the inside or outside of the neck. So there's no need to dry clean your cases or anything like that. You can actually just shoot them right after you turn. Take the neck turning tool, put your case up close to the cutter, and then just slowly start rotating in a clockwise and bring the piece of brass through. Run it slowly out, and there you go. There's all the brass that it took off. And then go ahead and loosen that puppy up and take a look. So see that nice clean turn neck? I went down just slightly into the neck shoulder junction, cut a little bit out there. Helps to keep the, well, it'll donut eventually, but okay. And then take your ball micrometer and slip your piece of brass in, turn the ball micrometer, and I'm showing 11 thousandths, or just barely under. Let's see. Oh, right at 11 thousandths. Wow, okay. Turn the brass a little bit and check at least 4 angles. Got 11 thousandths there also. We're looking for uniformity in the trim. 11 thousandths and 11 thousandths. So this is perfectly turned to 11 thousandths, which is exactly what I need. These are Lapua cases. Going to be using them in a 268 necked, 6 PPC reamed barrel hoe pretty soon. But yeah, that's how you do it. So dip it in the no oil again. No oil is very clean. You don't have to. Usually, what I have to do is dry tumble my brass after this to get all the gunk out. But with when I use something like Royal Dye case lube or something like that, but I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I'm going to be using the Delta Turning Lube That way I don't have to stick this brass in the tumbler for 4 to 5 hours to get the grease out from the inside and the outside. Anyway, here we go again. Another piece of brass. Slowly come out. There we go. There's your brass shaving. Loosen. Check again. Normally check 4 to 5 pieces. Then I start turning at a little faster pace. 11 thousandths. 11 thousandths. 11 thousandths. Well, this is turning it perfectly. One other thing that you could do is run the brass through some steel wool, clean up any imperfections there. I'm not really seeing any. This is a really good, just like that if you have to. This turning equipment, this tool, this Blueberry that's sold through Bruno Shooting Supply is excellent. And the cutter is actually new, so I'm not seeing any kind of imperfections on the neck. You could steel wool it anyway, just to be on the safe side. It's that simple. We'll get any slight burrs or whatever like that off of the brass. Now you'll have to wipe the brass down though, because the steel wool will get on that brass. But that's pretty simple. You just take a rag and wipe it off. Now there's different ways that people do neck turning. If I'm only taking about 2 thousandths off on these, but if you're taking a lot more than that off, or if you're turning a lot of brass really fast, there's different ways to do it. You can do it really fast on a drill press. I'm doing it kind of slow, so this is going to be my method here, what you're seeing now. Some people will actually get a bowl with ice water and drop their turner in it to cool it off, because they're going through so many cases, quickly, that it's really heating up this area. They call that the ice bath, where you just drop it in to cool it off. You can do that. Some people do 2 passes. So, let's say you're taking off 3 or 4 thousandths off the brass, off the neck. You may do 1 pass taking 2 thousandths, and then the other pass taking 1 thousandths or another 2 thousandths off. I'm only taking 2 thousandths off of these, so I'm just going to do 1 pass. But there's different methods. Certainly if I'm taking a lot off, 4 thousandths or so, or 5 maybe, I will do 2 passes. Take off, 2-3 thousandths the first pass, and then 1 to 2 thousandths on the second pass. But for this brass, no need to. All right. All right, everybody. Well, that's it. That's how you turn brass. One other thing, too, I may have forgot to mention is you can adjust this mandrel so that when you are turning your brass, it stops at a certain point. I have it set to turn the brass to stop just slightly into the neck-shoulder junction. Took a little brass out of that. So yeah, just make sure you set up your tool correctly, whatever tool you're using. This one is really nice and comes with a nice set of instructions on how to set it up properly. So again, I really like this Blueberry. It works really well. It's modeled after a design that's been used a lot and has really good endorsements by people. Again, the Delta Turning No Lube, no oil lube, makes everything a lot simpler and a lot less messier. Also, you want to make sure you have a ball micrometer and you measure how thick your neck is. And what I do, I like to not just check, on one side. I like to go through and check about 4 or 5 different sides to it, just to make sure they're all sizing in a uniform way. And looks like this one is doing really good. So I'll probably turn, I think I have 50 here, but I'll probably turn about 30 or so, and then I'll go back and I'll be just kind of randomly checking here and there with the ball micrometer to make sure it's still cutting uniformly and everything. But yeah, that's the deal. And then make sure you use a drill, not an impact. The impact might get going a little too fast. The drill you can kind of keep at a steady pace. Some people use drill presses too. Anyway, so hope that was helpful. Thanks everybody. Please like, subscribe, and share, and join my Patreon page if you can. Your support is very much appreciated. Take care.